Are you a young musician dreaming about studying in America? Are you intimidated by the American education system and unsure of where to begin? From planning your finances to building your artistic portfolio, accommodation tricks, and everything in between, I will tell you about my journey and I will give you some important tips so that you as well can get into the school of your dreams. Now, a small disclaimer, this is my personal journey, and if you'd like to know more about some particular details, please leave your comments below. My name is Katya. I am a jazz singer from Latvia, a small Baltic country of 2 million people. And when I was starting out back in 2009, idea of studying in the US was something completely unimaginable. It was like studying on another planet. So I did my undergraduate degree in the UK, but I was still dreaming about going to the US, except that I knew nothing about their education system, and frankly speaking, the costs were just intimidating me greatly. I must say that most of Eastern European universities start their admission somewhere in spring before the beginning of the program. Now, with American universities, admission process starts way earlier, like in September and October. So my biggest advice would be starting to plan your education at least 2 years in advance. Now, for me personally, biggest points of planning were obviously finances and how much can I save in 2 years. Second was how to build my portfolio so that I can secure bigger scholarship from the school, and obviously where and how to get extra grants for my school. Now, step number one with anything would be to do your research thoroughly. In the beginning, I didn't know which conservatory I'd like to go to. And also I was afraid of aiming too high and not getting in or not being able to afford it because the scholarship would be too little. So what I did, I actually Googled top 30 US music conservatories, and then I looked through every single school on that list. And to my biggest surprise, only 7 of these conservatories offered the program that I was interested in. And that simple step has significantly narrowed my options. Second, I created an Excel spreadsheet where I listed all the important information about each of these programs. Information such as audition repertoire requirements, whether it's live audition or recorded audition, transcripts, repertoire, how many references I needed, if I needed any examples of writing, so anything that could have been useful for my application. I also included information about the teachers, important deadlines, tuition fee information, etc., etc. All of that to allow me to make a better choice. Now, the next step would be selecting your top 3 universities. We can approach this in different ways. I just needed to figure out what would be my priorities. Mine were teachers and the program. I sort of knew already at this point which school offered the best program for me. A second was obviously financial considerations. And the third was the kind of environment you would be studying in, so the campus, the city, etc., etc. Now, I compared all the requirements, and what I figured out is that for standard auditions, you kind of have standard repertoire that you need to prepare. 2 schools required completely different program that would require extra time and money. One of other schools required TOEFL certification, which I thought was really unnecessary because I already had a degree from an English-speaking country. So I emailed them and there was no possibility of waiver. I actually crossed that school out of my list just because I thought that kind of bureaucratic inflexibility is really a red flag. I was planning to fly from Europe, so I actually couldn't go every single time for audition. I was intending to combine various auditions just in one trip. Then I started comparing audition dates, and I realized that one of those schools actually didn't offer live auditions, so regardless of my choices, I would still have to go there in person. So this kind of strategic planning helped me to figure out my top 3. And those were New England Conservatory in Boston, University of North Texas in Texas, and Manhattan School of Music in New York. And so I applied to all these schools. I already had a necessary list of materials, and I started collecting references as well. I started my applications around November. Usually the deadline is December, so 1 month would give you good time to slowly fill in those applications without any surprises. In terms of the essay questions, they are pretty standard. The school would like to know about you as a musician and as a person. So actually knowing where you want to go with your music, and also mentioning some of your other interests, whether you're teaching, whether you're doing any non-profit, whether you're into social media with your music, etc., can really give the panel a bigger understanding of who you are and how you fit better into their environment and into the culture of the school. So when it came to auditions, I actually got into all 3 schools of my choice. And at that point, again, I needed to make a choice. I realized I won't be able to combine all auditions in one trip. So I crossed out Manhattan School of Music. I realized I don't want to live in New York. I was trying to move away from the big city lifestyle to be able to focus more. So I was left with the University of North Texas, for which I did an online audition, and NEC, for which I did a live audition in person. Now, online audition with UNT went horribly wrong. It was still pre-pandemic, so we weren't very well versed in the use of technology. So we used Skype for the audition, and the sound, the connection just kept cutting off. And I was getting really stressed, and basically I didn't do very well in my ear training and some theory exercises. Another downside of doing an online audition is that you don't get to figure out the sense of the community, the sense of campus. But at that point I didn't have another choice. Live audition at NEC was very straightforward. They had about 17 vocalists on that day. I think that was both for undergraduate and graduate programs. And I was one of the last on the list because my surname starts with S. And one of my biggest fears on that day was that the panel would be already pretty tired. The musicians won't be focused because they've been listening to everybody since 9 a.m. and I was auditioning at 2 p.m. But my biggest piece of advice with auditions is actually to be really strategic about your repertoire. You only have, a few minutes to explain to the band what you want to do. So your scores have to be super clearly written. Your form has to be very straightforward, nothing out of ordinary. Yet the choice of the songs has to be something interesting, something that the band or the panel doesn't just hear or play, every day. And that will get you noticed, and also that will show that you are actually interested in diving deeper into the repertoire and diving deeper into your field of study. I have also prepared my original composition for the audition, and it went really well. The panel loved that I actually prepared something that is my own. In about a month's time, I received results from both UNT and NEC, and I got into both schools, which was amazing. I was super happy. UNT didn't offer me any scholarship, which was totally understandable because, I honestly don't think that my audition was that great. NEC offered me about 30% of scholarship. So at this point, I began implementing everything that I prepared in advance in order to collect my finances together. Now, we all know that American education can be expensive, especially if you are in the field of arts and you don't have a big backing from your parents. Now, while I was working on my application, I had made a list. Altogether, I had 7 different funding sources, which included a scholarship from the school, study loan, my own personal savings, a grant from the National Culture Organization in Latvia, a grant from a Latvian American organization in the US, my parents' contribution, and the money that I earned during my studies in the US. Now, 2 funding sources that I didn't use were crowdfunding and looking for a sponsor. At the same time, I know a few people who have successfully implemented crowdfunding campaigns and actually collected a reasonable amount of money that helped them to go to the school of their choice. For me personally, putting the money together was probably the hardest bit, because for your visa application, you actually have to demonstrate that you have on your account a lump sum of money, much bigger than what you actually need as a student in Boston. However, a very important thing that I have learned is actually to ask for a bigger scholarship. After accepting the offer, I have reapplied for a need-based financial support twice, and each time I got a small increase. But overall, I've actually increased my scholarship from 30% to 50% towards my tuition fee. Now, another useful thing to keep in mind is that in order to attend the campus, you need to provide a full list of your vaccinations. After pandemic, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but back in the day, I had to dig out my old childhood records from Latvia, and my GP in UK did not agree to verify them. So I had to spend quite a big amount of money to go to a private doctor, to get it all checked, to get the blood tests that I needed, and to get the vaccinations that I didn't have. Now, looking at it now, with the amount of international travel that I'm currently doing, this kind of paperwork is really important, and it was money well spent. But at that point, if I knew about this requirement in advance, I would have started collecting these records way before, and it would actually cost me much less. Now, my arrival to Boston was actually quite chaotic, and everything happened really quickly. Because I was still waiting for some payments, my visa interview was actually on Friday before the orientation week began, so really late. And I had booked a flexible flight, and as soon as I got my passport back, next day I was flying to Boston. Obviously, I didn't book any accommodation because I didn't know at which point I would be flying. But what I did do, I arranged several viewings through Facebook. You wouldn't sign any kind of rental agreement online. You haven't seen the place, and there are plenty of scammers out there. But arranging the viewings as soon as you land will give you a plan and a choice. So when I landed, I stayed in a small cheap hostel, and literally the next day I found my apartment. The day after, I signed the rental agreement. I had all the documents on my laptop scanned, ready to go, and on Saturday and the weekend I moved in. And my housemates at the time were laughing how organized I was, and that they have never seen, this relocation at the speed of light. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're doing everything in a little bit of last moment, my advice is just to be extra prepared with all the documents. Just Google what kind of documents are a standard requirement for the rental agreement in the state where you're going, and just have these documents ready on your laptop and ready to email as soon as you need them. Now, the biggest difference between American and European education systems is that in Europe, you sign up for a program and it already has a set of classes that you need to take. In America, it works very differently, in a way that every single department offers a different set of courses for every semester, and the students choose these courses in the same way as they would choose, goods at a grocery store. So not a single basket would be the same. Not a single student would have the same selection of classes. And even though for every program there is a compulsory selection of the classes you need to take, there is still a huge flexibility depending on your interests and on your level. Now, as someone who did 2 undergraduate degrees in European system, I actually found this freedom to be like a breath of fresh air, because I was allowed to select only the classes that I really wanted to do. There is really a great opportunity to develop your personal identity as a musician and to choose the skill set that will be most useful for your future projects. But I understand that this can also be very overwhelming, especially for young musicians. And the students are only given 2 weeks to switch between the classes, and each class picks up the pace really quickly. So in a way, in the beginning of semester, there is kind of this very big rush to get into the class of your choice. And it is important to understand that while there are some classes that are being offered every semester, there are some very particular specialist classes that are being offered only in fall or only in spring semester, and some that are offered once in 2 years, so every 4th semester. So what I did, I actually looked through entire course catalog that is offered, and I wrote out every single class that I liked within my department and within other departments. And then I looked through the calendar of every single semester before, so in total 4 semesters, just to try to understand which class is offered at which semester. And in this way, I kind of mapped out my class trajectory, and that allowed me to avoid any clashes and also not to miss on any class that I want. Now, the sooner you know which classes you'd like to take, the sooner you'll be able to register, and that would mean that you can actually get into the class of your choice, because a lot of classes are overbooked and it is up to the teacher to decide whether he or she will be able to get extra students for that specific class. But as much as you would want to take everything from your degree and attend all the classes, you need to understand that some teachers give unbelievably heavy workload. So it's better to have only one class like this every semester, because on average, every second student, probably by the end of April, is having some kind of panic attacks or some kind of anxiety because of the amount of the homeworks and the projects that everyone is given. Make sure that you actually have that time to rest and get your mind off your workbooks. And lastly, every school offers a large amount of additional opportunities, such as performance, teaching, some student leadership, being involved in various communities, etc., etc., etc. And this is a great way to meet new friends and to really integrate into university culture. However, these opportunities are distributed really quickly, so I would advise you to just drop a few emails before the beginning of the term. This way, you're just putting your name forward and the person who is responsible for these programs will consider you. If you're planning to teach as a side gig, make sure that you actually have your background check prepared, hopefully translated into English as well, because some schools are really strict about this. Now, fast forward, in May 2021, I have graduated New England Conservatory with Masters of Arts in Jazz Performance. And I must say that this experience has been absolutely extraordinary and transformative, not only for me as a musician, but mostly for me as a person actually. And I'm really happy that I have taken all this time to plan and prepare everything, and that I wasn't afraid and that I took this risk. Now, if you are considering to go to America to do your degree in music, I would say don't overthink, just start doing it and you will understand what is what and how to get things easily. And I hope that my advices and my tips were useful, and I wish you to get into the conservatory of your dreams. Well, I hope you liked this video, and if you'd like to share your experience or ask me some more questions, please do so in the comments below. Thank you, bye!